last time I came, I was giving a talk at Dessau at the Bauhaus for the 80th anniversary of the Bauhaus. And I think this year is the 90th anniversary. So that was my last time in Berlin, but that time, my first time. But I came during the summer, during the Love Parade. So I had a good impression. Bettina put me in a lot of guest list, so that was good. But I have to say, I don't remember the names of the places I've been to. The first place was a party for the magazine 032C. It was like on a bar between Friedrichstrasse and Charlottenstrasse. And that was good. I also went to Cookies. Okay. Very good food. I don't know if it's a good exposure to the Berlin nightlife, because I think this week is also, or last week was a fashion week. You know, so there are a lot of infusion that was coming in, yeah. It's always never really like a static place, and it's always something that's happening. You know, so a lot of transit, a lot of like transient, whether it's fashion week or film festival or biennale and such, you know, always been a place on the move. And I also think coming from Los Angeles, I find a lot of similarities. And not so much the physiognomy or the physical structure of the city, but LA is a place that's always about promise, you know, a promise things are happening, but hasn't happened yet. You know, so always when you go there, you feel this kind of possibility. And little I know of Berlin, it also has that kind of quality about it. I think the East Coast, especially in Boston, I think Boston is a place of the past. You know, I think there are a lot of traditions and restrictions. And Los Angeles, you still feel background and pedigree is not that important. It's really, I think it's also, they adopt this attitude from the film industry. You know, so when you come out to work in the film industry, Quentin Tarantino said that, it doesn't matter where you graduate from, what experience you have, it's about, can you do it or not? You know, and I think there's a kind of directness and possibility that's open to everyone, that's very democratic in that sense. Another thing about Los Angeles that really I like is, I think, if you contrast to other places where, like Paris, for instance, if you're not born in Paris, you're not Parisian, even if you moved there when you were 1 year old. And I think Los Angeles is a place where you can decide to be an Angelino, and tomorrow you're an Angelino. You know, it doesn't matter if you have an accent, or, you know, it has this kind of inclusiveness about it. You know, so that's something that attracts me. And I also think Los Angeles is, beside being a physical city, it's also a state of mind. You know, I think Los Angeles is also proliferating and growing in other places in a maybe kitsch way. In China, there are these developments called Orange County, you know. So I think this kind of mentality is growing. It's also, I think, proliferated through the film industry. I have friends who come to visit for the first time and they say, oh, it looks like, you know, I've been here before. It looks like, you know, 24 or something. Like everything seems very familiar. So, because I think over the years that the landscape of Los Angeles has also been ingrained in people's mind through the film media. I think for us, I think the website is more like an appetizer. You get a sense of what it is, but it's very hard to explain. For me, I think it's very hard to explain architecture. You know, I think you can always compartmentalize architecture, you know. Certainly going to see the physicality of the building, there's something. I think you can explain architecture, maybe through a concept, you know. So I think these different mediums have different lives, you know. I think this is something that I'm interested in. And our website right now for us is more giving just a quick sense of what it is about. And it also communicates if people are interested. I'll be very happy to discuss the projects with them, you know. And also, when we started our practice 10 years ago, we designed the website, or had someone help us design the website. And at that time, a lot of websites has a lot of bouncing balls and things. So we said, no bouncing balls, please. But maybe it's time to bring back the bouncing ball. Yeah. Well, a lot has to do with opportunities that was there. Both opportunities out there in the market, and also personally that I felt ready to do it. Given that, I also believe that it's not a one-way street. A lot of people, when I started, they said, well, you're starting your firm, what if it collapses, what if it, then I said, well, I'll go back and work for an office, And they said, well, can you still do it after you've been your own chef? Or, I think, of course, why not? I think we have to be flexible, It's not about like deciding on a direction. It's about an opportunity that happens. And I also think as my firm evolves or as it matures or as it grows, there are also other opportunities where I cannot take on a project on my own. We need different expertise, and oftentimes we have to collaborate with the typical case with local architects, but I also do not mind being bought by a larger firm, if there's the interesting opportunity out there. I think there's a responsibility. I always think there's a responsibility to history. I think it's not about a heroic way of reinventing the wheel, but I always, as an educator myself, I always talk to students that it doesn't matter if you know any history or not, even if you are a first-year student, first day in architecture, even if you have your favorite house that's next in your village, whatever you do, you are measuring it up against that. And not necessarily in a competitive way, but also in the long lineage of history and how your work contributes to a larger discourse and discipline of architecture. And I think that's always important. It's not if you're doing a small project or big project, but how you, in a small way or big way, contributes into that discourse. I think that's important. So inevitably, being in Los Angeles, it's always, there are a lot of hillside houses, especially the early avant-garde, such as Schindler or Lautner. Oftentimes, it didn't have the clients who could afford, the flat, big lots, and it gave them the motivation to be very inventive. So certainly, we benefit from being there and seeing a lot of the solutions or successes and failures they have experienced. I have to think about it, because this is something I can't, I think there are very different ways of teaching. I know there are teachers that are very formulaic. They have a certain recipe, that wherever they go, they give the same formula. And I think there's value to that too, but for me, I'm very, I'm intense. For teaching is partly research and also partly human experience. So you also have to know the interest, the background of the group that you're working with to create the best product. I think it's always, being in university is about partly the transference of knowledge and the production of knowledge at the same time. So if you can balance out these, it's never interesting just doing one by itself. But I think at the end it's about instilling, in terms of transference of knowledge, it's not so much giving not something that I know that you don't, but it's more about teaching a way of learning after you leave school. Because I think it's a lifetime of learning in the discipline of architecture. 5 years, 6 years is never enough, but how do you plant enough seeds that after 6 years you have a lifelong passion or interest to architecture?